Welcome to the East Long Meadow Broadband Committee meeting for Wednesday, October 28th, 2020. In attendance are, roll call.
Bruce Adams.
Bruce Adams.
Connor O'Shea.
Don Anderson.
And Ryan Quimby. But he's here, but there he is.
There.
I know you're here. All right, first is the minutes from our meeting of October 20th. Did we meet on the 20th or 21st?
I think it was the 14th.
14th, right, 2 weeks. Sorry, I got all these weekly Zoom meetings. I've got like the dates in my head are mush. Okay, 14th. Any comments or questions?
The only comment is I'm familiar with Connor's work in minutes and
Right.
it's exemplary. So great job.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right. So I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as printed.
Second.
Motion made, seconded. Any further discussion about the minutes?
I personally haven't had a chance to review all the minutes,
Okay.
so I haven't read them yet.
So do you do it? I guess we can wait and give you a chance to review them. I honestly, I'm not sure how that works.
Either do I, but
Having said that, Mr. Adams, I'm not sure how that works.
I feel confident with the work that Connor did on that and having the accolades that I heard from you, Mr. Mackey, and also Mr. Anderson. So I feel confident moving forward with it.
Or you could abstain and we'd still have a vote to accept the minutes. So
Exactly. That's what I'll do.
okay.
The other thought is if we approve the minutes and he finds an error, and we can always vote to
Right.
reconsider and correct after.
Very good. So we'll stay with the same motion made and seconded. All those in favor? Again, we'll do roll call because that's what we're doing here. Connor,
Yes.
Don Anderson,
Yes.
Ryan Quimby,
Yes.
and Bruce Adams.
I'll abstain.
Don Mackey, yes. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda, the Broadband Committee webpage. I just, thanks to Mary Race up in the IT office, that page is up and running. She set it up. I did make, I put a little blurb at the beginning. I haven't added information about the members really. I've just sort of listed the names of the members. But I think I'm at this point going to call upon Mary to help me manage that page because I don't know. I spend too much time trying to remember how to do stuff on there. So I think it'd just be easier to ask her to add information, and I'm sure she can probably do it in about 3 minutes. So, but just so that people know, if anybody happens to watch this meeting afterwards on LCAT, and is following what this committee is doing. There is information on the Town of East Long Meadow website on the Broadband Committee. It's under Boards and Commissions, and there is a web page there with some links to some information. Any questions about that? Okay. Or suggestions? Okay. Now, the next item is correspondence regarding new development. So it's part of what we're undertaking here is to sort of look at the cable license. I have had some communication from subscribers in East Long Meadow relative to, there are 3 at the moment, issues, and they're all different with Charter. None of them have to do with television. But Charter is the licensed operator for the cable system in East Long Meadow. So the one that I reference here in the agenda was regarding the Hidden Ponds subdivision up behind Graciano Gardens, and a time frame by someone who's purchased a lot there to build a house. I don't know if the house is built, but they got a window of, I think 12 months before they would have cable installed and have internet access at their home. And he's got 2 kids, I believe, in the East Long Meadow Public Schools. So I did reach out to John Mayer at Charter and basically just forwarded him the information, and he said that he would get it to engineering. So I'm only bringing this up, I think, because, well, it's not television per se. I think we do need to look in advance of considering and approving or recommending to Mary that the license be ultimately approved. There are issues relative to how Charter operates in town, and the number of complaints. So there's a process for that. Did I forward to you guys a link to a document from the Department of Telecommunications and Cable from the state on license renewal? I think it whether I put it on that page or not, but I will send it. And it basically just outlines the renewal process for a cable license. We do have to hold before May, whatever the date was, 14th, 2021, we do have to, or the town has to hold a public hearing on a proposal that ultimately will be submitted by Charter for us to sign, or for Mary to sign. And I think typically in the past, that public hearing has been hosted by the Cable Advisory Committee, since we are the new manifestation of that. I think that falls to this committee to host that, even though it's ultimately the town manager who's inking the license with Charter. So just a heads up about that. And so familiarity with the cable process. And I think in the meantime, I copied Mary and Ryan on those communications and my request back to Charter to say, can you address this? I don't know if you guys have any input, or certainly Ryan, I guess, if you have any input.
Did you ever get a response?
I got a response on the one about hidden ponds from John, just saying he was going to forward it. I haven't gotten anything since. I got another call today from somebody with whose phone was disconnected because they changed something else with the service, and the phone got disconnected, and the people haven't had phone service since, I think, October 9th. So this gentleman called, actually, the customer is an East Long Meadow customer. The customer's brother, who's a Ludlow resident, called me because they can't call me because they don't have phone service or landline service. So anyway, I forwarded that information. I did not get any kind of an acknowledgement that John received that communication. But this is the third one in a month. And my practice now is going to be to just forward that communication. I've asked people to put it in an email to me. Ultimately, I think it should probably be in an email to the town manager, and that should then just get forwarded directly to Charter. I'm not really sure it's the cable TV guy that ought to be managing this. I'm doing it because Jennifer didn't really know what to do. She gets these calls and sends them to me, which I think is fine. I'm happy to field the calls, but if this is going to become a weekly thing, I think that's a different animal. So I don't know what your thoughts are, but I'm putting it out there for you to think about as we deliberate on the terms of the license, and to ask Ryan and Mary what you think, what is appropriate there.
Mary's she's trying to get reconnected, and I also for the hidden ponds, I have a contact of I think it's the guy that does like the local scheduling and planning. He helped us out with Fairway to get. We had a family there that didn't have internet,
Okay.
and helped us get them set up like a week after school started. It wasn't too bad.
I remember that. I remember you talking about that. Now, is that a guy from Charter who's in charge of the planning?
Yeah, it's a charter guy. I'm not sure where he's based out of.
Okay.
I got it from the homeowner. CC'd me on the email to the guy, so I now have his info. Sucks to be that guy.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, so I just so that the rest of the committee's aware that, you know, as these issues come up, it's not really, there's not a formal system in place. It's always been very informal for as long as I've been here, to reach out to the VP of Government Relations in Worcester and say, hey, I've got these people calling. Do you think you can sort of light a fire under somebody and get this resolved? And it's pretty much always happened, and it's been pretty effective. But it's not a formal thing. And hi, Mary.
You're muted.
Yeah, she's just trying to connect. I'm just going to give her. a
Hi,
minute.
can you hear me?
Yes.
We are.
Yeah,
I'm
sorry,
about that.
I was listening from the beginning. I just couldn't get connected. So if you fix that, Ryan, thank you.
I'll take credit.
Okay.
What? Did you fix it?
I had a reboot, so I'll take
Oh,
the
reboot. Oh, okay. Reboot. Well, all right. So anyway, so Mary, I at some point you must have dropped out a little bit, but I was just talking about the process of forwarding communications that I get from Jennifer, from subscribers who have issues with Charter. As we're contemplating the license, I think that's something that we have to have a conversation about, right? I don't know how we
Definitely.
work that into the license negotiation. There's no real room for that, but.
No, I appreciate the fact that you're being advised of that, and they should know for whatever effect it may have. We'll see. I know, as you said last week or at our last meeting, there's not a lot of room for negotiation in that renewal.
Right.
But I guess if we at least express our dissatisfaction in certain instances, it will make us feel better.
So the other thing, and I mentioned about the public hearing, and I'm not sure there's a time frame. There's really, I didn't check the statute. In the renewal guide, which is a pretty general document, it does say that there's no requirement for ascertainment. There's no sort of time windows, 90 days, 180 days, that kind of thing. But it does say that the hearing is required even with an informal renewal as such as we're doing.
Mhm.
But when that hearing happens, I don't know. But I think typically John Mayer is called in other communities to be in attendance at that hearing.
Yeah,
So
we should probably nail that down then,
I
shouldn't
think we
we?
should nail that down. So that leads me to my next point is I have shared both the current expiring license, the document that John sent us, which was, I think he called a template, which is pretty close word for word for the existing license. The only part that it didn't include was the section on local access TV, or PEG, right? PEG television, I don't know how it's phrased. Section, I think is chapter 13 in the license. And maybe I already said this. So I put as comments in that document the changes or the issues that I had sort of going into this when Marion, Ryan, and I met with him some weeks ago. So one thought that I had about how we'd proceed sort of generally was maybe see if people were interested in kind of following up on different areas of all the things that have been part of this discussion so far. And one of them would be the license. Now, Mary's involved, Ryan's involved, and I'm involved, but maybe one other person just to have another set of eyes on that license to go through it with the intent of picking up on anything that maybe we missed or questions to ask. so that we can change that document from being, comments on the side to a kind of draft proposal that we send back to Charter and say, this is what we're thinking. And at some point, ultimately from that, they would then send a proposed license with all the things taking into consideration what we're after. And we did that probably back and forth 4 or 5 times the last time around, because I had a charter review, not a charter review committee, charter, too many charters, cable advisory committee that, was sort of trying to pick apart the license in every detail. So that went back and forth, but ultimately they will submit a document and say, this is what we're proposing. If it's acceptable to us, then we schedule that hearing, present that to the public, and then ultimately kind of satisfy that negotiation and resolve that. So that's one thing. That's any questions or any comments about, I'm doing all the talking here. Yeah, Don.
Don. First, I want to go on that last point. Is one of the beauties of having this kind of subcommittee, and Mary can correct me if I'm wrong, is that we do have the power, even if it's necessary by subpoena, I suspect, to bring in someone from the cable company if there's a continued non-response to issues, because we are in this negotiation and talk. And I believe cable company are about the optics. They wouldn't want this to be out there and having questions and a litany of this is non-responded, this is not responded, not get involved with the day-to-day issues. That's the town manager's department. But if it begins to the point where it's just ridiculous, then bring the person in, John Mayer, or whatever the person's name is, and have them ask questions. And we'll be on Facebook Live and so forth on that subject. Now, getting back to the point at hand regarding the license, Charter, I know it's Long Meadow, Springfield, no. Hamden, yes. Wilbraham, yes. Ludlow, yes. Chicopee, yes. Are there licenses, I would assume public record, that we could take a look and to see what they have and get that downloaded into our file so we can review that in toto to see what kind of flexibility, or are they pretty much all cookie cutters, the same, here's what we got, you're taking, this is what you got, to see what they've given in?
No, you can do that. Every license is a public document. I think you'll find there's a list if you go to mass.gov and go to the DTC, which is Department of Telecommunications and Cable, you have to navigate a little bit because of what they did to the state website, but there's a list, a PDF list of all the television licenses. The current license that's expiring is actually not even on that list. It has the prior license listed. So how accurate that is anybody's guess, but you can then click on those and actually open up each license. Every community is different, and different cable companies. So Long Meadow's license with Comcast is not going to look anything like East Long Meadow's license with Charter. That's true. So you'd have to sort of compare apples to apples and look at Charter licenses within the. So Wilbraham, Hamden is covered by Wilbraham. Hamden doesn't even have cable access TV.
Don, I just sent everybody that link that at a bulk email. Yeah, some of these licenses are 2004.
Yeah. So it's of interest. I don't know really how pertinent it's going to be. And again, the license that was, there have not been a lot of changes to the license that was initially granted to, I'm going to say it was before Greater Media Cable Company by the town of East Long Meadow. Once that document is in place, the framework for those changes to take place is pretty rigid. So even though town of Wilbraham may have terms in their license that are noticeably different from East Long Meadows, even though we both have charter, those differences were probably established years ago and just kind of carried forward from license to license. But that's somewhat
Well,
speculative.
I think Don has a good idea there, and perhaps in this spring, if we have a month or so with a light agenda, we could invite John Mayer into a council meeting, either at the scheduled public hearing or in advance of that hearing,
Right.
just to give him the opportunity, or give our residents the opportunity to address their questions. I don't want to ambush the guy. It might be a good thought to solicit public questions in writing ahead of time, if that's not too cumbersome an
Right.
endeavor. But I think it would be good to have some representative from them, from their company, addressing some of the issues, rather than putting the burden on you, Don, or any of us to try
Or
to
you,
explain
yeah,
what's
absolutely.
going on.
And so his predecessor, Tom Cohan, did that in the past. I would say they're used to it.
Yeah,
The other thing, I guess I would just make the point that to Don's first point, that I don't think so far we're at the point where there has been like non-responsiveness. I think there was a prior issue actually on Colony Drive, and Mary and Ryan, I think I copied you on this one. And it ultimately, John Mayer actually sent me like pages of documentation from engineering to demonstrate that it was not the cable system, that it was the customer's router in the house that was probably the source of the issue. So to me, I never got that kind of information in years past. So I found that to be very responsive. Now, I'm not getting any indication whether or not they're following up directly with a customer to resolve those problems. In the past, they always have. I provided the information, and then the customer would maybe call me back a couple of weeks later and say, hey, guess what? They came out, it was fixed. Thanks so much. It was great. So I don't think we're at that point yet where, there's a problem. I just really wanted to, in the context of this discussion in the committee, raise with Mary and Ryan the procedure to follow if these things keep coming in. The call goes to the town manager's office. Jennifer refers them to me, and then I refer it back to Mary and Ryan. As am I the one that should continue to make that contact with Charter if it sort of continues that every couple of weeks somebody's calling with a complaint? Because I do have a sense, and that as sort of the word gets out that people are saying, well, you can call the town hall and they'll go after Charter for you instead of having to sit on the phone with customer service for 2 hours. That's going to be a route that people will take.
Yeah, I don't think we want to. I think we want to have them call customer service. I mean, the last couple of times I've had to call Charter customer service, it's actually been pretty good.
Yeah.
Talking to a live person within less than 5 minutes and having a resolution, pretty quick.
And even these two, they have tickets. They already have work tickets. So they're calling because they've got a work ticket, but they're not seeing progress fast enough or whatever. But yes, we don't want to become the intermediary for every customer who's got a complaint with Charter, because that would be a lot of people.
yeah. I've not directed Jennifer to do that. I think that's something that she does as a courtesy to an individual department head. When an issue comes in from the public, she'll automatically almost send it out to the department head.
Correct.
Perhaps in your instance, not fully appreciating the fact that the complaint is about a third-party service, not something that the town is providing. But I'll talk to her about that tomorrow.
No, and
because
I
we've not
encourage
been
her to do
tracking
that.
it.
I encourage her to do that, Mary. So and again, my past experience was it would be like once a year or twice a year.
Yeah.
And so this is, I have not complaining. I think we need to be clear about what the process is going to be. And
Yeah, well, maybe she could also respond to some of those emails and just indicate that, that the party should contact the customer service office. But sometimes that sounds dismissive and
Correct.
we want to be anything but that. So
Correct.
we'll figure out an alternate strategy.
Okay, and that's fine. And we don't have to figure it out in this meeting, but I just really wanted to make the committee cognizant of that. So the only other issue I had was, I talked a little bit about divvying up tasks, and I did come up with a sort of a list of what I think could be done by this committee in the meantime. So we talked a little bit about Wilbraham last time and the status of their broadband committee and their attempt to sort of look at the question of municipal broadband. So someone wanted to just follow up specifically about Wilbraham, what the issues are that they're facing or where they're stuck. Just kind of more detail for the sake of comparison to give us a clear idea of what, I mean, we reached a point of fairly general conversation last time. But I mean, so they voted, Ryan, if I'm not mistaken, they voted the whole MLP part of it.
Yep, they created the MLP and then it kind of stalled at that. I can reach out. I know one of their selectmen over there, so.
Yeah, so if you know if it's, yeah, I mean, I think it would be helpful to have, you know, a page worth of sort of concrete information about where that stands, because it would give us a sort of an indication or a window of more specifically what we would be up against.
I can reach out to my counterpart over there. I was actually in the Army with him, so.
Okay. So the television part of it in particular, one of the other things that I do when people call and complain about Charter and it's so expensive, and the sort of basic package that Charter puts out is still something like $79 a month or something, even though the charge for the basic channels in and of itself, I think is $19 a month. But the government gives Charter the right to include that basic component in a tier to satisfy the requirement that they have to offer basic cable. So you cannot get just the $19 package of channels because Charter doesn't package it that way. However, so when people call, I say, well, you know, you could get an antenna, and we put an antenna up on the roof of the senior center. And I don't know, I think they still get something like 27 channels over there at the senior center over digital broadcast from the area TV stations. So if somebody were interested in looking at all the options in 2020 for a resident of East Long Meadow to get television programming and what that looks like, I think sort of presented concisely, that might be a helpful thing for the residents. So if anybody wants to take that task on, that I think, I mean, I did it in a very cursory way in that document that I created. But again, that's just me doing quick research. I think something a little bit more robust would be helpful.
Don, I sent everybody a couple things that hit my social feed. I screen captured it.
Yeah, I saw those. Yep.
Basically, it may not, whether it's set right now, I think it's really not that far away. That what we know as cable companies are all going to be, the competition is all going to be mobile cell companies that, you know, with 5G, 6G, 7, whatever. You guys really educated me at that last meeting about how much this technology has grown leaps and bounds, that I don't even think it's feasible for a return where it may have been in 2016, but just like that, things changed. That when you're seeing T-Mobile offering internet to people for $50 a month, you know, that's with competition, that's just going to go down and the speeds are going to get better. And cable is going to find itself. That's why a lot of cable companies are now migrating into offering self-service as well, because they probably feel that they're going to be You don't need to have the underground wire. All you need is the cell towers, or the trash cans, as you guys call them, on the poles. So I'm happy to continue scouring the options. I mean, as far as TV, I mean, there's a lot of great options. I personally use YouTube TV, as I may have mentioned, but the core is I need high-speed internet to
Right.
get. And there's other Hulu. There's a number of other television options. But as far as the vehicle to get it into people's homes, it's going to be a function of, we already know Fios has stopped at Worcester. They're not coming. They don't seem to be coming in here. We could use Verizon, but it's a relatively slow speed. And if you have a few people in the house and people working from home and people learning from home, you're just going to be sucking up all that bandwidth. That's just really not going to work. So there's not really a lot of options right now. The options, as I see them, are frankly slow internet through, say, a Verizon, or using Charter, which is the only show in town. And then in the near future, with 5G being set up, that's going to be a very viable option. But I'll keep looking and sending you guys all what I find. I'll be happy to.
Yeah, I guess my thought was to sort of put together just even a chart, like the big postcard you get with your trash pickup, right? That says what the dates are, when's going to be cardboard, when's going to be cans. To say, right now in East Long Meadow, this is, and we don't necessarily have to pay to mail that out, but something that is the information presented in that form for residents. So if they call to complain, or I can run it up on the channel, or we can publish it somewhere that, these are the actual options that get you television programming. Because a lot of our population does not know that those options exist. And it's really just making that available to them. And I know you're talking about broadband internet, you need high-speed internet in order to do some of that. That's fine. That's sort of the bigger scope of why we're here. I'm just looking to, if there's anybody, and maybe it's me because I'm the TV guy, to look at what are the television options. So you have digital antennas. What's the best for the money? You could spend $29.95 for a digital antenna that maybe isn't going to work so well. Maybe, and I don't know this, is an $80 antenna worth the extra $50? I am not sure. A lot of it has to do with where you are. But is it, and maybe I guess I should ask, is it reasonable for this committee to spend time collecting that kind of information and making that kind of information easily accessible to the residents? I don't know. Maybe we're overstepping. Maybe my thought is that's not really up to us to do that.
I think any time you can make the residents' life easier by virtue of providing information, it's wise. It may not be the exact scope that you anticipated with this committee request or formation, but I think it doesn't sound like terribly onerous task to accomplish. And then I think it would help, even if it only helps a small percentage of people, it'll help that percentage of people, which to me is worth it. So those are my 2 cents worth anyway.
And since you're speaking of trying to get information to the public, a thought could be, when it gets slower, is to put a joint meeting between this subcommittee and the town council and invite representatives from Comcast, Charter, Spectrum, Verizon, other companies as well, and maybe even someone from a local store that sells on-air antennas, and give them all a minute or two to speak to the committee and to the council and talk about where they are now and where they see going in the future. So I think that would be a very well-received meeting for informational purposes only, not without any type of agenda, except for just sharing information. But who knows when we're going to get
Any thoughts about that?
So who knows about, that may not happen. We got a lot on our plate, right, Mary? Right.
Fair amount. But Don, is that something that could be done piecemeal? In other words, could
Oh, absolutely.
these various representatives, could they be filmed interviewing with you and then have your department put together some sort of a, cut and splice presentation for publication? Because I don't know, I mean, I'm happy to discuss it with the council president to see if that's an option that he would entertain to devote council meeting time to that. But if he probably would say yes, but if he said no, maybe we could do it in an alternate way. And that way you wouldn't have to have all these people together
Right.
on one date.
So I think that's an interesting idea. I guess, and I hadn't really even thought about anything like that, because I guess the question is, realistically, if that's the approach, and you have a council meeting where these people come and provide that information, that's different, in my view, from consolidating the information and making it accessible. Again, I'm going to go back to that postcard about the trash, just because everybody has it. It's clear. It doesn't change. And you've certainly dealt in the town manager's office and Amy and with people complaining about when they rolled out the new trash bins and, various aspects of the trash service that generate a lot of complaints. But that card is pretty, like, nobody calls to argue about that, right? And if you say, these are your options for television, then if you have those people in or you have those conversations, when that generates interest by people watching it and say, oh, I've always wondered, why don't they do this? Why don't they do that? Because they don't really know, because they're not paying attention. That you have the information in one place to say, here, let me send you this. If you don't have that, then you're just talking over and over again. It's like the number of times I've told people that Charter does not have a monopoly in East Long Meadow because it's preferred by the town. I've said that 1,000 times. Now that information I can point them to documents, but I guess I'm just, I think to Mary's point, trying to make something that is actually easy and low tech for people to have the information that they need to make a decision. Am I going to pay another $120 this month for cable? Or can I go buy an antenna for $60 one time and get what I want to watch on TV?
I think Mary's idea is brilliant. I think it basically, we could, to the extent the council could make a new comment, say, hey, we got this great video that Don Mackey put together and LCAT explaining the options. There's a summary card available at Town Hall that you can pick it up. And the video can, explain, I don't know if we can provide local options for people to install these antennas, because we may have people, with colonials or what have you, and they don't want to go up on the roof and install and see if there's any people, businesses in East Long Meadow that are licensed that'd be willing to offer a fixed price, for instance, to offer these services. And all we have to do is just try to use the council just to facilitate and under council comments or new business, and have you or myself or anybody speak, directing people to this resource. But Mary's right. I mean, if we just have the one meeting, I see it as maybe, we may have great attendance, but that meeting will go away and unless people watch it. But your video, like you do when candidates nights and so forth, that stays. There's a link for it. So great idea, Mary.
So does somebody want to take that on? Because I'm trying to dole out work here, in case you didn't get that part. Specifically with television, how can I watch TV in 2020 in East Long Meadow? That's it.
I'll offer Jennifer, if you can give her some guidance on the
Absolutely.
appropriate questions.
Yeah.
I think that's something she'd probably like to do. And I'm sorry, I think I spoke over you, Bruce.
That's okay,
Apologize.
Mary. No, that's fine. I was just thinking about, I've taken it for granted that the cable bill just shows up every month, but if I'm a new resident, how do I find out what's available to me? And would I
Right.
go to the town website to find this information? Then I could download that rather quickly. I could see that postcard theory working quite well in that aspect. I don't know if the town gives out welcome baggies or welcome gifts or something like that to new residents, but that could be also an inclusion at that point in time. I think it's beneficial to have information readily available so that if someone does call up and complain and say, by the way, you do have options, and they may not even be aware of those options, whether
Correct.
it's Verizon or the digital signal. I think it would be worth it to do that video. I do like that concept of here's the information for you. If you've got an interest, we're putting it out in front of you. So the postcard and the video would work out quite well.
Okay. So I can connect with Jennifer then if, you could check with her first, but if she wants to, if she's interested in that part of it, then I'm happy, that'd be great. I'd love to work with her and.
Sure.
and
I
that
think
together.
she would enjoy that, Don. So I'll
Thank
speak
you.
with her about it tomorrow.
Can I add one more point about so I get the message out? When we attorneys order MLCs, municipal lien certificates from the town clerk's office, the presumption is not all the case because a lot refinances, but the presumption is there's going to be a new home buyer there. So there's a one sheet that comes with the MLC to the attorney's office. And if it's a new purchaser, they're asked to give that information in the closing packet to the new purchaser. Perhaps that can be slightly modified, putting a link that says internet services and put the URL to the town site in there. That's one extra vehicle, and we're already sending that information out as part of the MLCs. And we know it's going right into the closing packet of the new buyers if people are doing what they're supposed to be doing.
No, I think, again, my goal is the fact that there are more options. But for us to all know, certainly the members of this committee, anybody who represents the town, to be pretty accurate in what they know about what those options are and what they entail. So that they're not calling up and, people aren't calling in saying, well, gee, I don't know, really, I don't think you have any other options. Well, that's not helpful. And there's no reason for it not to be better. And that's, I think, one of the things that I envisioned the value of this committee being. So let me jump into another task would be, if the economics, do we want to have essentially the same kind of backup information, documentation, for lack of a better word, of what the economics are right now for East Long Meadow taking on a municipal broadband system for sort of the same thing? Well, why doesn't the town give us broadband? Over in Westfield, they do it. Is it worth spending, 2 months of somebody, I don't mean 2 months steady, but the next 2 meetings, somebody take on, track down, what are the economics at this point? What are the startup costs? What's the return? How many years till you break even? Just everything I think that we've assumed. I mean, Don, you're saying, well, I look at the competition and I've got this thing from T-Mobile. That's still anecdotal, right? I think it is valuable for, again, representatives of town government to take it a couple of steps beyond anecdotal and say, look, here's this study that was done here in a comparable town. Here are the numbers. This is what it costs. It is going to mean when they want to build a school, they say it's going to put, $15 on the tax rate. Then people have that number and they say, well, I don't want $15 on the tax rate, or not $15, 15 cents or whatever, $15 a thousand. So I don't know. My thought is that would be worthwhile to do because we're talking about making a policy decision, but it shouldn't be based on anecdote. It should be based on data.
But we should find a town that's not like Holyoke, Westfield, Chicopee that already have municipal services, gas and electric and so forth. So we need somebody that's done it from square one. And
Right.
I'm not aware of
Right,
any.
well, that's what so that involves time, and that involves somebody getting on the internet and hunting around and getting that data that is comparable, or finding, in fact, no such town exists. The closest one that comes to mind is Wilbraham, and they're stalled. Why are they stalled? Right? But just to make that kind of verifiable, not just have it be an anecdotal. Because at this hearing, all of that information could be presented in a reasonable form to people. And for the people who take the time to pay attention, they're going to say, oh, okay, well, now I'm convinced. That's all. I think that in general, town government needs to do a better job doing that.
I think that's a good idea.
I think that'll kind of probably overlap with, did Wilbraham have a study done?
You know, I don't know. I think they did. And that's the other thing. A lot of these towns, I mean, back in the beginning of all this, when everybody was excited about it, towns were paying big money to these consultants to do these studies.
So if I can find their study, we just do a find and replace.
There you go. But I don't want to put all the work on you. I mean, I guess that's but
It kind of overlaps with what I'm doing. I think finding a study I can reasonably take care of, going out and digging up how much it's going to cost to buy the trucks and everything. I do not have the time for that.
Right.
And I don't know how much detail we need to get into. I want to make a convincingly reasonable argument for people as to why we would recommend a policy decision. I mean, it's just common sense to me. But
Well, I think it's a good idea. I guess the concern I would have is that whether we have anybody in the town's employ who has the expertise to actually, I mean, we can gather information,
yeah, that's all I mean.
but in terms of
And I meant-
making recommendations, I guess you can recommend things to me for ultimate decision on a given issue, but I get a little reluctant just because I don't want to create some sort of a duty that the residents might think, well, the town's telling me this, so it must be right. And that's why people go out and get professional consultants and people with higher degree of expertise. And I don't mean to disparage any Ryan's or your expertise in these areas, but I don't think either of you have the time to do that either.
Well, correct. And I guess I'm not trying to accomplish what a consultant would accomplish, because that's not really the purpose at this point. Because I don't think we're committed to doing that kind of a study. But again, I'll go back to what I did here, and I think in this thing that I put together, if you go into that, there's a bunch of links in the back that I probably didn't send you individually, just so you see. And there's some of those studies that were done, in 2010 are out there. So I'm not looking for somebody to, make recommendations for a policy decision, just for members of our group to research a little bit more and get a little bit more background information about, what's the scope of this? How reasonable is it? Maybe we don't really need to do any of it.
No, I think
I know everybody's busy.
If Ryan can track down Wilbraham's initial
Right.
information, that would be a good starting point.
All right, why don't we start with that?
Yeah,
That's
because
fine.
I mean, if their committee, got stuck in the mud somewhere, then they're basically the same exact scenario we're in,
Correct.
where they don't have a municipal light plant, they don't have a dam or a specific internal water or power source, no MLP. Well, they have an MLP on paper, but they don't have a department. So, granted, yes, they're a little farther ahead of us that way, but I think if we see, okay, well, they stop dead in their tracks because they don't want to enter the pool of competition, we're going to be in the same boat.
Correct. And maybe that's enough. just knowing that and why, and having a, 2 pages of notes and, that explains why, maybe that's all we need. That's all I'm trying to accomplish.
If I could, Mackie.
Because that's probably 3 steps ahead of where we are now. That's all.
Maybe it's a slightly hybrid approach. I mean, I agree that we're probably not going to be able to figure out an exact cost, because I have no idea how much all that equipment would cost. I don't think any of us really would.
No,
But I mean, we could at least figure out, yeah, where did Wilbraham get stuck? What were they at? But then maybe we at least figure out what are all the conditions or concerns that would have to be met for anything like that to even be successful. I know we kind of gave like a broad overview last time at our first meeting, but maybe we just kind of enumerate all of those out in a document to just say, there's these 20 things that the town would have to overcome before anything like that could happen.
that's exactly the scope or scale of what I'm envisioning, what I was thinking that we could get to as this committee. Because, I think it's safe to say we're probably not going to be sinking our teeth into developing a plan for municipal broadband at this point. Because I think that whatever evidence we have, as anecdotal as it is, says it's probably not worth it.
Yeah, it's not even close, I don't think.
But so if that's enough to go to the residents, but again, to go back to my point from last time is, what if that changes in 2 years? Does then 2 years from now, a different group of people start from scratch? Or have we put together some kind of framework for that conversation to continue as things change? Anyway.
I think a baseline is important, and that would serve that purpose, certainly. So if it's not feasible now, who knows what'll happen in the next year, 2, 3, 5.
And we know one thing, it's always going to change, no matter what happens. The technology is going to change. The infrastructure is going to change. If people do go to the cell phones, like Don was saying, maybe that's going to change the way we look at things in the future too. But as I look at the infrastructure that we currently have today, I recall listening to Ryan last time saying that, there's space in the poles, but the poles aren't owned by us. We only have so many residents in town and so many businesses that would purchase this product from the town. We're going to find out that it's going to be not a huge money maker. It's just providing a service. Then when Verizon or Spectrum has the trucks in town, they spread those trucks out across this town and other towns. So they're not having a dedicated team like the ambulance service that's sitting in town, is what I'm seeing is an analogy. But in order for us to really go forward with this, we have to have a basis of what we can do with a municipal business, which we don't currently have today. So if that business model changes further down the road, I think we can look at it. But I like the idea of looking back and saying, these are some of the reasons why we don't think we can do it currently today, so that people know that we're looking into it. And I like what Connor said, maybe list out those items, the reasons why we can't do something like that today. I don't see it happening right away.
There was some action. I found a really interesting site. I wasn't sure if this is one you sent me or I just found it randomly. It's called muninetworks.org. And then /tags-180, and it's all Massachusetts. And it speaks of Chicopee and others. It's just, I'll send you all that link. I'll forward it to you. What's interesting was a post that was just put about a month ago, which is kind of on topic to a degree here. Massachusetts law to remove pole attachment fees for municipal broadband projects got stalled. And that's what they call HD 4492. And it's languishing in the Legislative Telecommunications Utility and Energy Committee. And what that was a follow-up of what Connecticut, which allowed, in a court case, allowed affirmation, allowing cities to attach to utility poles that are in right-of-ways without any fee. And that tried to carry over into Massachusetts. And that would be huge if it passed. Now, the purpose of this law was to also help municipalities reach tough to reach areas within their communities. However, if the overall principle allows us not to have to pay a fee for telephone poles, that would be a big cost saver. And if we do have to pay a fee per telephone poles, that could also be a deal breaker. So I'll send everybody this link. It has a whole bunch of interesting articles, just FYI, including these and Chicopee and Worcester and other communities. And there's an interesting one which ties into my other gig on the Planning Board's Matter Subcommittee of a mixed-use project on the Cape, trying to put one, a non-for-profit, put one in their project. And that's also an article in this thing.
Don, that was actually one of the areas too, one of the sort of tasks that I had on my list of 5 things to sort of spread around the committee members here would be just to sort of track those types of updates and sort of tech news and anything kind of relevant that's happening sort of on a week-to-week basis. You know, you sent the little flash thing there from T-Mobile about that service, and I have T-Mobile for my service. And it's great. That's the only thing I have. I don't have television, I don't have cable, I don't have anything except that, and it's perfectly functional. But if you that seems to be an area that you're interested in and are always kind of tuned into stuff coming across the wires there.
Oh, I'd be happy to
just kind of digest that between meetings and sort of, you know, forward that kind of stuff and say, hey, by the way, because I think what you just described is certainly relevant to our conversation. If we have a chance to read that and comprehend what the implications are. Yeah. So if that's an area that you would be willing to spend some time between meetings to work on, I think just sort of keeping track of those kind of things.
This kind of stuff of scouring information, and I'll see if I can find more, and just be prepared for your inbox to get some more information.
Oh, I think that again, just like we're trying to make it available to the residents, I think the more information we have, the more reasonable it is for us to spend an hour on a Wednesday afternoon talking about this stuff, because otherwise we're just, actually, I'm just talking. That has to stop.
Can I ask an odd question?
Yes?
Now, we keep talking about broadband. What about cell phones and cell phone towers? Is this going
Well,
to
that to me, that encompasses, right? Because that's where that's going.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the bandwidth that is allowable now, whatever the technology to deliver that bandwidth, I mean, it's becoming more and more irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, I'm using the term broadband to mean anything that isn't dial-up at this
Okay.
point.
Just want to make sure I'm on the same page.
Ryan, is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's probably fair to say. Although, I mean, DSL's.
Oh, DSL, right. Yeah. Fair point. All right, any other discussion or conversation, questions? I don't really want to keep being the one driving these meetings like this.
I may reach out to Joel McAuliffe. He is Senator Lesser's legislative aide, but he also is a city councilor in Chicopee, and he is involved. There's one of the articles I sent you guys. It speaks of him, how his city of 55,000 people has seen in concrete terms of benefit of building a municipal fiber network. But understand, remember, Chicopee already has
utility,
water, electric. But just I might just pick his brain a little bit, if you don't mind.
No, again, that's what I think this committee should be doing. Right. I think that the goal of this committee should be that when people have questions about why is this such and such isn't happening, why are we stuck with charter, why isn't somebody doing something about it, that there is an effort, a tangible, concrete effort with, you know, information available to people that they say, oh, I guess they're on it. That's it.
Yeah.
All right.
One more thing that I
Yeah, go ahead.
was thinking of, maybe it's one of those 20 points of things that we put together, but I think Don Anderson kind of mentioned something there about the mixed use article there. And that could be something interesting as a point now that the town's currently considering that, is if there were large scale single projects that were to happen in town, maybe the town can't undertake an entire town initiative, but maybe there's considerations for providing either direct service or a way for a provider to get that amount of service to a large number of people in a small area.
Yeah, like the mixed use thing, it's right on our fiber backbone. You know, it's pretty easy pickings.
Well, there you go. Yeah. So, I mean, that's a really interesting idea. And we touched on it a little bit last time, but I think, you know, were that project to move forward, then how does this group actually consider how to turn that into an opportunity? What are the criteria? What's the work involved, right? That's, to me, that's the meat and potatoes of why we're here. Because that, to me, seems like a real opportunity. That seems like a great idea. But how do you go from us talking about it here to getting on a time frame that's consistent with that project to actually make it happen? It takes work. So, all
It
right.
does, but that project's not going to happen tomorrow either. So even if the
True.
bylaw passes and construction or the developer submits a proposal, that there's several different hurdles to still jump over to get shovel in the ground. I would move as expeditiously as possible on it, but I still think it's at least 2 years away, if not 3.
Yeah, and at a minimum, all we need is conduit. So if the conduit's there,
Yeah.
when we get to it, we can get to it, you know. Or if somebody else wants to run with it and just lease our space and our fiber backbone, then we do that too.
But there's a good article on it, on that link I just sent you, further down on April 9th, story about Open Cape Residential Fiber Pilot, a window to better connectivity on Cape Cod. But that speaks to that mixed use.
And maybe that's also part of our just list of general considerations too, is I think our last meeting, we kind of talked about, you know, would it be feasible? And I think we kind of just anecdotally said it wouldn't be, but that was if we were considering like a one big, you know, if you build it, they will come, the whole town type of project. But maybe there's a different set of considerations if it's just if a particular neighborhood or if a particular new development all agrees to do something from the outset, that yeah, the town can do that without as much overhead and maybe prove it out first in a small scenario before making it a big project.
I think that's, I think all of it's, you know, interesting, and it's worth putting some good minds to the, you know, to what that actually entails. And, you know, maybe it's theoretical, maybe it's not going to be realized, but I think, well, you know what I think.
I wouldn't mind putting or trying to come up with a list of all those considerations, and
That would be
we can
great.
certainly add to them.
That would be great. Thanks, Connor. All right. So do we want to try to do this again in 2 weeks, or should we give ourselves some more time?
Maybe a little time. You
Yeah,
know, maybe a
2
little
weeks
more.
is a Veterans Day anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't think there's any real urgency at this point, but I think it was worth it today to just try to sort of pin down, like, what are we actually going to do? Why do we even have this committee? So,
And as long as we're not deliberating, we can constantly feel free to share information with each other.
Yeah, I think if you drop stuff into that folder on the shared drive just check back, everybody will get a notification when something goes in there. And so, all right.
Okay.
So I guess, where is the calendar?
The November 18th.
So that's a month.
Oh, that was 3 weeks. I don't know. Did we want to go a month?
Oh, I don't know that it matters whether it's a month.
Yeah, a month would be the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, so it's
Yeah, so that would be out. So yeah, we could go. Yeah, we could go the 18th or December 2nd. You tell me.
I mean, we can always go the 18th and see where we are, and if other people have thoughts on the research we've done thus far individually.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
Good.
Same time work for everybody, 3 o'clock?
Yeah, that works for me.
Yep.
All right. Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
So
Oh.
moved.
Sorry, Mary, I just sent you a chat, but if Jennifer can connect with me, I'd like to talk to her about maybe part of the digital signal portion of her project.
I'm actually trying to answer your chat.
Okay.
And I'll be happy to share that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's it. Now you can go back to Ryan.
Okay.
I will second Ryan's motion.
All right. Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, Connor?
Yes.
Don Anderson?
Yes.
Bruce Adams?
Yes.
Ryan Quimby?
Yep.
Don Mackey is yes. Thank you all. Thank you guys very much. I appreciate your insight and your willingness to do this. So
Thank you.
I'll
See you
see
next
all of
time.
you at some point on Zoom somewhere.
Thanks.
Besides here.
Hi, guys.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
afternoon.
Thanks, Mary.
Bye-bye.
Welcome.